Hello, everyone, and welcome to Manthano Parenting Conference. So nice to have you here with me today, and so nice to have my dear friend, Katharine Hill. Welcome, Katharine. Welcome to Manthano.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be with you, so glad to be participating in this conference. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's nice having you. Now, Katharine Hill is the UK Director of Care for the Family, a national charity that aims to promote family life and help those who face family difficulties. Katharine speaks and writes widely on family issues and has addressed thousands of people across the UK on marriage and parenting issues. She is the author of several books, including the popular Left to Their Own Devices, Confident Parenting in a World of Screens, and her new book, A Mind of Their Own, Building Your Child's Emotional Wellbeing in a Post-Pandemic World. She draws on her personal and professional knowledge in writing articles for newspapers and magazines, as well as in national and local broadcast interviews. Katharine leads on care for the family policy agenda at government level and has served on the board of International Commission on Couple and Family Relations. She is married to Richard, and they have 4 grown-up children and 5 now grandchildren. Today, she will be sharing from her book, A Mind of Their Own, Building Your Child's Emotional Wellbeing. Thank you so much, Katharine. So tell me, what inspired you to write this book?
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for that generous introduction and for changing 4 to 5 grandchildren, because that was just this week. So that's very exciting. So what inspired me to write A Mind of Their Own was that I was aware of the increasing levels of emotional ill health, anxiety, and depression amongst a generation of young people. And that was just before the pandemic. So I had begun writing the book, then the pandemic came, and those levels of anxiety have just rocketed and soared. And I imagine that many parents listening to this, they might be struggling with their children's anxiety themselves, or they might be just wanting to get some really good tools in their pocket to enable their children to develop emotionally healthy lives. And I think one story really struck me when I was preparing to write the book. And I write about it in the first chapter, and it was about a psychologist. And she was talking to a group of parents about the kind of issues that she saw in the young people that she was counseling. And she was talking about this when suddenly a woman interrupted, and this woman had already been fairly vocal, I think, in the question and answer session. And she said, these kids, they just need to toughen up. When I was their age. But she never did get to finish the sentence, because the psychologist then put her hand up for her to stop. And she said this, she said, "Madam, you were never their age." And I think that psychologist was right. Our children are growing up in a world that in many ways is light years away from the world many of us grew up in. So there was an exhibition recently from the Children's Society, and they were putting on examples of objects designed to represent modern childhood. And they had included in this exhibition a child's stab vest, a notebook containing dark thoughts, anxiety concealer makeup, and a mobile phone case that was covered in messages of fear and worry. And it is a very, very different world, a lot of pressures on our young people. But the good news is this, that as parents, we're best placed to help our children navigate this and to build them as confident, secure adults and able to navigate those challenges. And I think in the same way that we help our children grow physically, so we put stair gates up and we teach them to swim and cross the road safely. There are things that we can do to help them grow emotionally as well. They're harder to spot, and harder to manage, but those things are there and are well within our grasp. So I want this time to be really encouraging for parents to know that this is something that we can all do in the little things of everyday family life.
That is so, so true. I think when I read the first chapter, that example you gave about the lady just saying you were never their age, I just think about it. Even when I look at myself, you know, my children's world and and my world's totally, totally different. So I can't even, computers didn't even come out to when I was 20 years old. So I love the way your book really gives examples and activities for parents to really explore their children and help them in their mental and emotional well-being. Do you want to share about that?
I'd love to. Yes. So, I mean, there's lots of chapters in the book looking at lots of different areas. And so we won't have time to cover them all now, but I can give a little snapshot of some of the things. Many of the areas are ones that are just foundational anyway for us as parents. And then there's some specific things that build on those that help us build well-being. And as you've said, at the end of every single chapter, there are some action points, things that you can put into practice in the home, and an activity that families can do together. And we can come to share some of those at the end. But one of the key building blocks, I would say, is how we give effective praise to our children. So the Bible says that our words have the power of life. And as parents, we can literally be speaking life to our children by the words that we speak. And there was a lovely story about a teacher at a school that I met. And it was her first term and she had her first parents' evening. And she said a little girl it was the girl's turn, to have the feedback. And the mum was there, and she said to the mum, "What's your daughter's name?" And the mum said, "She's called Claire." And so she proceeded to give her really lovely feedback. She said she's great in class, she listens, it's cookery lessons. She said she brings all her ingredients, she helps other people. And this mum looked a bit surprised, but she went on to see the next teacher. A little bit later in the evening, another mum came along, and the teacher said, "What's your daughter's name?" And she said, "Claire." And she realized she had made a terrible mistake. And this was the Claire that had been so good. And the first Claire was different altogether. But she said it was too late. There was nothing I could do. But then something really interesting began to happen, because this first Claire that was late, that talked through class, that wasn't at all diligent, she began to change. So something really interesting began to happen. So the first Claire, the one that was late, that was not a good student at all, she began to change, and she began to come to the lessons on time. She began to be diligent. And the mum later said, she said, "You were the first person ever to have said anything positive to her." And it enabled her not only to know that she could change, but really that change was possible. And the lovely story is that this little girl went on to become a cookery teacher herself. And I just thought it was a lovely story about the sheer power of the words that we have to help our children grow in confidence. And it's hard, when everything's happening in the morning, we're trying to get out the door, we've lost the car keys, the nappy needs changing, the teenager's not even out of bed yet. It's really hard to find those positive things to say. But I think if we can praise character and we can praise effort, it builds that sense of well-being in our children's lives. And in the introduction, you said I had some grandchildren, and my little grandson Ezra is 2, and he had just been to his nursery school. He just started at nursery school, and he came home and he had this bright pink star with lots of things something written on the front. And my daughter was very proud, and she thought, "I wonder what he's done. Maybe he's recognized an E, maybe he's done a jigsaw puzzle or a painting." And then she read it, and we couldn't stop laughing, because it said, "Ezra has been kind. He shared his tissues with the other children." So in these COVID times, this snotty child sharing tissues. But I think that teacher was really wise, because she'd spotted that he was kind. And I think when we praise character, it draws it out of them. And I hope my daughter will continue to call out those things in his life, and that he'll grow up to be somebody who's known for his kindness. Because I think whether we're 2 or 22 or 92, we all need people to give us effective praise. So so praising effort, praising character. Certainly when ours were teenagers, we'd often try, if they'd done an exam, we'd often try and take them out for a pizza or have a takeaway or something to celebrate after the exam and before the results, to praise character and effort, to praise the hard work rather than just the results. So that'll be the first one, giving effective praise. Second one, I think, is linked, a little bit more difficult, but this is about helping our children get a realistic view of themselves.
You know that, you know that effective praise you just spoke about?
Yeah.
I remember reading it in your book. And my daughter's just done her GCSEs, and I went, Karen, here we go. You better make sure you start praising her before the results come out. So I love that example in your book. Yeah, I think effective praise is extremely, extremely important, especially if you want to bring out those godly characters. And if that's part of your values, you know, in your home, you know, having those effective praise is tremendously important. So go on, please.
No, I totally agree with that. And yeah, it's one of the, I just think the power of the words that we speak. You know, if you think God spoke and the world came into being, you know, there is real power in the words that we speak. So yeah, that would be the first one. Second one is, yeah, helping them have a realistic view of themselves, because I think if we're not careful, we want to encourage them and we praise them for anything and everything. So again, this is a story in the book, but I remember all the sports days, going to the sports days and lining up and cheering them as they throw the bean bags into buckets and the hoops and sprint for the finishing line with the tape and things like that. And then we'd all cheer, and then the teachers would gather us together, and every single child would be given a certificate for taking part, because it's this thing, everyone's a winner. And we had a little birthday party at the weekend for one of our grandchildren who was 1, and I did a little game of pass the parcel. And I made sure that there were the same number of layers of paper as there were children. And so everybody got a turn. And then everybody, in the end, there was a little pack of bubble, you know, the bubbles that you blow, 1 each in the middle, because, you know, we want everyone to be a winner. And I think that's 100% a good idea if you've got little ones at a birthday party. But what has happened, I think, is this has crept into our culture. So if you think about the television programs like Britain's Got Talent, Love Island, things like TikTok, they give the impression to our children that they can all be extraordinary, that they can all be a celebrity, that they can all be winners. And of course, some of them can be. And so for parents watching this, you know, any one of these children that are represented by the families could be in the Premier League as a footballer, could become a famous scientist or a children's author or whatever, but they can't all do it. And I think the key here is to recognize our children's limitations as well as their gifts, and praise their gifts and encourage them to be the person that God has created them to be, and not to have to go along with the culture that says that everybody can be extraordinary. And I was on I did an interview on Radio London with the interviewer Vanessa Feltz, and we had quite a debate on this, because of course as parents we want our children to succeed, but we don't want to put that heavy burden on them to be somebody that they're not. And I think as Christian parents, to recognize that God-given identity in them and really encourage that and speak that out is really a really positive thing we can do. And that's one of the really key ingredients of emotional well-being, is knowing our limitations, but knowing the things that we're good at, and encourage them in those. So that would be a second one, I think, really important. And And then the third one, I think, is something called growth mindset. So when we're faced with a task, there's two different what's called mindsets that us or our children even might adopt. And one's called fixed mindset, which means that we think that we are good at something, but we're born good at something, and that it's about our giftedness. Whereas the other one is called growth mindset. And growth mindset means not that it means that you can grow, you can learn. Your giftedness is just the beginning, and then hard work and effort is what's used to enable you to grow in that. Fixed mindset: if you're rubbish at something, you'll always be rubbish at something. If you're good at something, you'll always be good at it. Growth mindset means you start with the gifts and abilities that you have, which will all be different, and then you work hard. And that is the one that we want to encourage. And many schools are amazing at encouraging this growth mindset, learning that it's through effort that we get better at things. And there was I don't know if people have heard of the musician Ed Sheeran, but he had an interview with Jonathan Ross on the Jonathan Ross show on the television. And he said, people think that musicians are born with talent. They're not. It's through hard work and effort on top of your giftedness that is the secret. And again, that takes the effort and it takes the stress, I think, away from our children, encouraging them just to keep trying and asking for help and going back. So that would be three things. So giving effective praise, having a realistic view of themselves, and cultivating this thing called growth mindset. That'll be three key building blocks, I think, as we look at this subject of emotional well-being.
Lovely. Yeah, that is so important. Yeah. I mean, based on that itself, our parenting class, we do what's called nurturing the heart of a child for leadership. And what it is that it's a unique framework. And what that part of it says that children, we're trying to build leadership in our children. And reason being is because we believe that there's potential in our children, just like what you've said, to help them become a positive influence in the world and fulfill their God-given purpose. However, we want them also to be discerning about how the world influences them. And I know you've talked a little bit about this, but how do you think we can help parents, help their children take healthy risk and understand why it's important?
So resilience is at the heart of this question, I think. It's a name that we hear bandied around a lot when we're talking about emotional well-being. And in scientific terms, resilience means bouncing back. So it's the term used if a substance is out of shape and can bounce back to being in the shape that it was. But what people have been using the term more recently to describe is not just bouncing back to how we were, but actually they've put it bouncing forward. So not just going back to normal, but actually learning from a situation and growing through it. And that's the quality we want to encourage in our children's lives. And in relation to that, it's important to understand that we're not born resilient. It's a quality that we have to learn over time. And there's something called the resilience loop. So we go round and round and round each time, learning resilience. And in terms of how that works, so if a child is faced with a really difficult task, I think adults as well, there's one or two ways that we initially react. So first of all, we might what's called internalize the difficulty. So we'll think, say it's our geography homework, and it's really difficult. And they say, I'm rubbish at geography. I can't do it. I'm never going to be any good at school. So they internalize it. The other way, if you're faced with a difficult task, is to externalize it. So instead of going in on yourself, you project outwards. So, the teacher's really hopeless. Mom, you didn't test me properly. And it's all the sort of the school's no good. So you blame outside things, external things. And I think we can see neither of those are very helpful. So what as parents we need to do is recognize when our children are going down one of those two different routes, and then help them. And this is hard to understand, but just stand back from the problem and sometimes allow them to feel uncomfortable, to feel the pain. Now, for me as a mum, I was that helicopter parent. Who is the helicopter parents are the ones that zoom in at a moment's notice, because they want their children, as we all do, to have easy lives. We don't like seeing them struggle. And so we zoom in with the rotor blades whirring, and I would be driving across town to deliver forgotten sports kit or spelling books or whatever it was that they'd left behind. But it's not always a good idea, because it's as they stand back and as they struggle that they learn this important quality of resilience. And it's not something you just learn, it's over time. And it's a little bit like a painting. If you're putting a layer of paint on and then another one, and each time you go through it and they find a solution themselves, then you learn to be a little bit more resilient next time, and then again and again and again. But it's hard as parents, because I want anyway, to step in and make life easy. But allowing our children to experience failure, allowing them to struggle is how they learn this. And I love the fact, one of the things writing the book that I've loved is finding out how much of the scientific stuff is reflected in the Bible. And so in relation to resilience, there's that lovely verse in Romans chapter 5, where it talks about suffering producing perseverance, and perseverance producing character, and character producing hope. And that is what it is. And it's as we struggle that the character, the perseverance, and hope are there. And that is just a really precious thing to help our children with. So that would be resilience. But in relation to that as well, I think there's two other ways that we can be helping them. And one is by helping them with their thinking, and the other is helping them with their emotions. So maybe let's start with emotions. So if parents have got little ones, there's probably a lot of emotional stuff going on with little children having tantrums because the red beaker has been given to them rather than the green beaker, or they have got fish fingers and baked beans touching each other, or whatever the big thing is. They're too little to manage their emotions. But then the teenage years, it can be difficult as well, because I think if parents of teenagers are watching this, sometimes it can be quite volatile. Feel like you're going around tiptoeing around the edge of a volcano before the next big eruption. Yay, there we go. But that's normal. And this is the really key thing for parents to understand, is about the teenage brain. So we used to think that all brain development took place when our children were little, but MRI scanning has shown that there's a lot of activity and development that takes place in the teenage years. And that is to do with the brains becoming sharper and more efficient for thinking and developing. But it's all going on during puberty. And the bad news for parents is that the different parts of the brain develop at different rates. And the very last bit to develop is this bit at the front, which is called the prefrontal cortex. That's the bit that regulates sensible long-term decisions and planning, delayed gratification. But that's simply not developed in many of our young people. So what they use instead is the bit at the back of the brain called the amygdala. And that's the bit that is the seat of our emotions. So a lot of the time our teenagers are literally thinking with their emotions, which is why they often do things that we think are not such a great idea, like, going cycling without a helmet on, or going on gaming the night before their GCSE exam, or whatever other crazy thing they might be doing. But and one mum, when we explained this to her, I remember it so clearly, and she said, this is such a relief, because I realized it's not all my fault, but it's not all his fault either, because they're thinking with their emotions, and they're a work in progress, and it will get better. And that's the other great thing about the development of the brain, is that what's called the plasticity of the brain means that there are neural pathways that are developing as our children learn to do new things. It's a bit like in if there's an overgrown forest and there's a big wide pathway and it's easy for us to walk down, and there's an overgrown bit and that's hard to walk down. But as we do that more and more, maybe the bracken and the grass makes a pathway that gets broader and broader. So as we teach our children to think in different ways, their brains actually change. And then it will be easier then to go down that pathway than the other one that's then overgrown. And there's a bit in the book about that explains that clearly, I think. But again, how great is God in this? Because the plasticity of the brain, in the Bible, it talks about the renewal of our minds. And that's what's going on. And so, again, so encouraging for parents that our children aren't set in this place, but there's the scope to help them change. And just one story on that, so that I put in the book, is about two teenage girls, and they do what they love doing best. They're in the changing rooms, trying on clothes, taking selfies, and in the evening they both post the pictures. And the first girl, Maria, she looks and she sees that somebody has made a comment that she's got scrawny arms, and she's really sad about it, even though she's got lots of likes. And so she thinks, yeah, you know, my arms really are scrawny, I don't work out enough, I'm really ugly. And suddenly, through the power of thinking, all the joy has been taken from her day. And then at the same time, her friend Leah, she is also in the changing room and has posted her pictures in the evening, and she looks at her phone as she's going to bed. And again, she sees she's got lots of likes, but she also sees somebody has commented that she's got a fat tummy. And again, she feels hurt, but she has learned to manage her thinking by how the things that she's choosing to think about. And so she thinks, well, that was a mean thing to say, but I'm not going to dwell on it. And actually, that was a fun day out, and I love my new top, and it was a real bargain, and I think I look good in it. And she's able to rise above it. And so that's the key with our children, to help them catch those negative thoughts, and then we challenge them with the truth, and then help them to change by choosing to go back to that more positive way of thinking. And it is so powerful. So powerful to help them do that.
That's lovely. I remember I did read that example actually, and I said, I really pray that I helpfully support my daughter to be that second child. And that's where the true meaning of having a mind of their own really comes in. Because, you know, when you do those activities and you help them to understand how to have that growth mindset, you know, how to think positively, how to not keep on letting all those bad, negative things that come out, and they do come out. I remember just speaking to a parent just today, actually, and she was talking about her son who is being bullied via his phone. So he's receiving all these texts that are coming in, and they're talking about, you know, they're going to get him, and she's tried to go to the school for support and all that. But, you know, just walking through with her son and doing all those things that you've mentioned, I think that's a step forward for him having a mind of his own in such a situation. So, yeah.
I think that's so right. One of the little exercises for that particular chapter is called Blue to True Thinking. And so basically for that mom, you get their child to write down the blue thoughts, the negative thoughts, maybe they're catastrophizing, whatever's happening. And you either write them down on a piece of paper or put them on their phone. And then you challenge them with the truth, and you write down the true thoughts. And then when those blue thoughts return, they've got that to turn back to read the truth about about them. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, that's a lovely activity, actually. And it supports your child to be that second person who reads it and says, you know what, yeah, they've done this, but I can look beyond that. So thank you so much. So, thank you for this, and thank you for everything you've shared. So alongside this book, you offer various other resources. So how can parents access this book as well as the other resources that you provide?
Wonderful. So so this is a book, A Mind of Their Own, and parents can access this through Care for the Family website, so careforthefamily.org.uk. So if you go to our website, you can see it there. The publishers are called Muddy Pearl. And so if you went to Muddy Pearl, you could access it there, and also all good bookshops. But for people who are watching this seminar, this conference, we want to give you a really special offer. So there's a second book I've written that's called A Mind of Their there's Mind of Their Own, and the second book is called Left to Their Own Devices, and they really go together. Left to Their Own Devices helps parents navigate the digital world. It's confident parenting in an age of screens. And so we want to give you both those books for £20. So that's at a discount. And there'll be a code that you go to the muddypearl.com website, put in the code, and the details I know you'll have available to you. And if you want to take advantage of that, we'd love to be able to make that offer to you. And I think just one more thing to say in terms of parents' goal in this is helping our children discover their God-given identity. And there is some incredible research that is not faith-based research, particularly secular research. And it says that in order to have good emotional well-being, our children need what they call something bigger than me mindset. And this research by a doctor called Martin Seligman says that religious hope is a key part of that. So helping our children have that bigger sense that there is a God who loves them, that has plans and purposes for their lives. And as parents, we can play our part. There's no guarantees, but we can play our part in sowing those seeds and talking to them. I know with our children, just being able to say to them that there was a God who loves them and who has good purposes for them and who loves them unconditionally, that there was a possibility of faith that helps grow that well-being. And then whatever our faith position, if we can show them that unconditional love, that is the absolute bedrock, I believe, of emotional well-being, knowing that they're loved, whether they fail, whether they succeed, whatever their circumstances of life, that they're loved. That's everything.
That's lovely. I think that actually is like the thing that keeps on coming up in all the sessions we've had, that correction without connection breeds rebellion. But finding those opportunities to connect with your child, as well as enabling them to see that there's someone who has got their back, someone who is bigger than they are. And we as parents, we role model that through the way in which we interact with our children, connect with them, as well as giving them the testimonies of what the beautiful things that God is doing in our lives or in the lives of others will help them in their emotional well-being. So that is a very important thing to be reminded about. So thank you so much, Katharine, about that. So thank you. Now, before you go, we like to ask all our speakers to please give us a take-home activity. I know you've spoken a lot and your book does offer so much for us, but can you give us a take-home activity that we can do right now?
I absolutely could. Can I give you two? So one little one is that if particularly for younger children, if they're anxious, you simply get a shoebox and you cut a hole in the top, or any old box really, but cut a hole in the top. And then you get your child to either write down the thing they're worrying about or draw it. And then together you post it into this box. And then depending on what you want to do, you could say a prayer as you do that. You could just post it in, whatever you want to do. And then you get it out at the end of the month, and you'll see just how many of the things that you worry about, that you've almost dealt with by putting them in that box. Actually, maybe they haven't happened, or something better has happened. And that's the opportunity to be thankful. So that would be one. But the second one, and I think this would be a really important one in this age of technology that our children are growing up in, with so many pressures on their character in terms of the accessibility of the digital age. Lots of good things about the digital age, but some big challenges. And that would be to have what's called a family media agreement. And all that means is you get together with your family, everybody, little ones, teenagers, and the parents, and maybe you get some snacks or favorite drinks, make it a fun thing, and you agree the ground rules for technology in the home. So you agree, do you allow phones in bedrooms? Do you allow screens at meal times? What do they do if they find something scary? Who pays? What kind of sites can they be on? What platforms can they use? All those kind of things. And some people write 3 columns. Yes, you can. Ask us first. Don't even think about it. You might not want to write it down. Just chatting about it sometimes is enough. But the key is this, that everybody signs up to this, even the parents. And it's great, but it keeps everyone safe. It's not like a straitjacket to restrict their freedom, but it is it's ground rules. It's like a safety belt to keep everyone safe and to enable us to use technology to the full. So there's more details about that in both books, actually, but that would be my key, a family media agreement for the whole family.
Oh, lovely. I love those 2 activities. Yeah, I think it's time to revisit mine too. So I think we'll be doing the second one too, even though one of them is 19, but I still got another one who's 15. And I think we need to revisit our agreements again. So thank you.
Well, I think in COVID, in lockdown, everyone had to throw the rule book in the air. We were on screens all the time. And so I think many families are finding now, how do we get back to, do this differently? So that's a good opportunity to do that.
True. I had to throw that away because she had no friends and that was the only way of connection. But now I think we're back now. And so let's revisit it. So thank you so much. I will be revisiting that one too. Thank you. So, well, parents, I think we've really and truly enjoyed this session, and we've got activities that we can do. So we'll be talking a lot about that in the Facebook group, Parenting with Angel Eyes Facebook group, our lovely community. We'll be answering those questions and talking about the take-home activity that we've had from Katharine. So thank you so much, Katharine, for a lovely session. And parents, hope to see you soon in the Facebook group. God bless you. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.